as said, my name's Adam and I'm the lead teacher educator. And today I'd like to show you a bit more about Sensations English and how it can be used in your classroom to benefit you, your learners and your schools. So the overview is just a little bit of thinking about English language skills to contextualize this, and then talking about Sensations English quality. Why the product works. We'll give you a short demonstration of Sensations English, and then think about how to use it in your institution and in your classes. And then there's a quick Q&A as well if you've got any questions. So moving swiftly on, thinking about language skills, we've now got 50 years of research into language skills and into communicative language teaching approaches which focus on them. And when we think about those skills of listening, reading, speaking and writing, we think about what they do. And with listening, it's really important for our learners to gain the independence to be able to function in another language. And it widens their opportunities for learning because they become more independent collectors of information. When we think about reading and the importance it has for study skills and also for gaining detailed grasp of a situation, of a context, and speaking as the first aim of language, and the idea that you have a voice, your personal viewpoint, your personal input into the world is given through speaking. And then of course writing, which is increasingly, of course, is part of literacy and education, but is in English, writing in English is increasingly a tool for life in the modern world, and something that gives our learners that opportunity to excel and to broaden their horizons. So when we think about communicative language teaching, it's all focused on the ways we combine our language knowledge from vocabulary, grammar and pronunciation into that use of language. And it's intrinsic to building confidence in using a language to build abilities in these 4 key skills. So thinking about what we do with those skills, I'd like to focus for a moment on Bloom's taxonomy, which I'm sure you're aware of, but I'd like to start with decoding, first of all, putting that underneath the taxonomy, and thinking about when we've got that language receptively through listening or reading or watching now as well, then we can build up the taxonomy on top of that. And that first half of the taxonomy, dealing with the lower order thinking skills, we're very commonly doing that in our classes, in English language classes or in other foreign language classes. But then the higher order thinking skills are often harder for us to reach in those activities that we do. And it's something to do with the structure of the courses, the way in which they are put together, that the content has to be quite general, has to be good for a large number of years, doesn't really stray into the modern day, into the present day. And that's something that at Sensations English, our news reports do. And it makes the higher order thinking skills easier to deal with or handle in the class. It promotes their use. And if we think about some of the verbs and some of the functions that these different levels of skills require or apply, then we're going down from, the decoding of processing the sound or letters into units of meaning, and the practice of doing that is core to our language classes. Then moving on to recalling, explaining and using information, which we're very good at doing in our classes. And then the harder stuff, the stuff that it's often harder for us to generate engagement with our learners, is to draw the connections among ideas, examine information and make judgments, and use information to create something really new. And these things are really what requires a lot of context and a lot of learner engagement. And there's nothing more present than the present day and the news in the present society to engage learners in that. So that's what we do at Sensations English. And I'd like to tell you now quickly how we work to standardize lesson resources and ensure that they are high quality. And so we work from selection to broadcast to make sure that we guarantee quality in all of our texts. And that starts with using an international news agency, AFP News, to source all of our resources. And then we use experienced DLT writers, as you would expect. We focus on vocabulary and grammar, considering what's necessary at each level of English, what's what's building on the skills that came before, and how we can draw learners out and help their idea of intuiting knowledge or dealing with unclear information or unknown words or unknown grammar, and how we can pull students forward using that rich context. We also use something called Lexile, which I'll tell you more about in a minute, to check our work and check our leveling. And then we have media production, high quality from an industry expert. And on top of all of that, we consider the Common European Framework of Reference and how that connects into everything that we produce. And so the AFP News Agency is high quality global news resources. All of our writers have a minimum of 10 years classroom experience, because we have found that without that, the ability to get to know what the students will need at each level, expect and anticipate what learners might have challenges with, and also what learners can cope with, is really difficult without that level of classroom teaching across all levels of English. With the vocabulary and grammar, we work with K-lists, collocation. Idiomatic uses of language are gently and slowly and gradually introduced at different levels, so that the idea of intuiting is built in as a soft skill that learners are developing. And also we work with the traditional structural grammar syllabus of what we expect learners to be able to manage at different levels of English. Lexile uses data-driven analysis of text to tell us if we've got this right or not. And our 35 years of production experience in English language teaching and modern foreign language video resources and audio resources means that what we produce is high quality and ready for classroom use. And with the Common European Framework of Reference, we don't just focus on the 4 skills, which were in the original 2001 publication, but also the companion edition that was first sent out in 2018 and updated in 2020. And that focuses on more refocusing on pronunciation, and then dealing with other skills like mediation, and goes into a lot of depth on all of the different language subskills which are necessary in order to have successful communication and build confident learners. So we're really thinking about all of this as we create our resources. To tell you a little bit about Lexile, it's an amazing technology. It provides a quantitative scale on which you can grade all of your all texts or student ability, and we use it to focus on our texts and see and check that they are at the same level, and I'll show you a diagram of that in a second. It measures text complexity, so it thinks about things which will make it easier or harder for a learner to process, right down from a very basic level all the way up to proficiency. It also evaluates text characteristics to do this, so it's an interesting and very complex algorithm based on 40-50 years of research, which creates this measure that we get. And the measures look like this, from 0 to 1500. And as you can see here, these different lines represent the different levels of text. And this is every single text that we have written since the product launched. And you can see that there's a definite clear gap between each of the texts. So we know that there is a progression of, and it's corroborated that we have a progression of challenge at each level. And you'll see that not every text is the same. Some texts are easier and some texts are harder, but you'll notice that there is that clear gap between each level, so that when learners are using it, if they need scaffolding, they can go down a level to get that. If they need more challenge, they can go up a level to get that, because all of the resources are made at all 5 levels that we provide. And to think about those levels a little bit more, and the CFR can-do descriptors, so we begin down at A1 with, and it's useful to remember that CFR also have names for their levels, and breakthrough deals with that basic information and those basic interactions. And that's what you'll get from the texts when they're written at A1. When they're written at A2, that's the way stage. The kind of predictable information and interactions are accessible to learners at that level in a new language. But that's where things kind of end, and anything you put in beyond that needs to be richly contextualized and carefully supported. And I'll explain how we do that a little bit more in a minute. At threshold level, B1, familiar topics and general interaction is is what learners can do. But going beyond those familiar topics is more of a challenge. So that's something that we really kind of bear in mind when we're constructing the text at that level. And then at B2, you have that advantage over the language, the ideas of the grammar, the vocabulary, the ways to use it. And that comes out in the fluency that learners show in a range of contexts. And that really comes through as we get into more detail, more analytical kind of connections between issues in the text. And then finally, we get to C1 level, the effective operational proficiency, where learners are fluent and flexible in most contexts. And that's where there's so much more space for richer vocabulary, richer collocation, richer use of grammar to come in. And finally, there's mastery, where you're operating with ease in most situations and contexts, and you're able to read the Times of India or the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal and operate in any work or social situation. So thinking about how that leads into what we do with vocabulary and grammar. First of all, with vocabulary, we make sure that we're checking our texts and using K-lists from the British National Corpus of units of 1,000 words, and ensuring that comprehensibility, knowledge of words is expected at each level to ensure learners are clear. We also use collocations, so if a new word does need to come into a text because of the vocabulary for that situation, and it cannot be explained in another way, or we think learners can reach for this word at a certain level, we'll use collocation to make sure that there's such a lot of context around those words that there's very few meanings that that word could possibly have, so that learners get used to, first of all, not worrying about every word they read, but also being confident to have a go at guessing what that word means and feeling that they have a working understanding of it for that context, rather than needing to reach for a dictionary at every level. Then we also use international words to broaden things out. So you may see some words like tunnel, which you think aren't taught at A1, but when you know that that word is the same word in almost every language in the world, then that becomes a word that we can introduce learners to. We can help them to collect from their first language and bring into their second language, dealing with multilingualism and plurilingual practices, and helping learners to be able to connect together the languages they speak. And then we gradually introduce idiomatic usage so that learners are becoming aware of those transferred meanings of vocabulary in combination with other words. Thinking about grammar, we follow a structural syllabus, as I said earlier, to ensure that what we produce in each level of text is what learners can cope with and expect in terms of grammar, and it's what teachers can expect and then use the texts to do grammar work with, taking examples from the text in order to create lessons or practice a certain grammar form. We also gradually through the levels work to combine pieces of grammar together into multi-clause sentences or complex phrases. And that helps learners to start bringing together the words and the grammar that they know. And that's exactly what the benefit of these rich contexts, which the texts provide, really brings into the classroom. And with that combination comes complexity. So you'll see more complex use of vocabulary and grammar in connection, and those forms that certain words really use in terms of grammar, their colligations as well as their collocations. And finally, in all of our recordings, pronunciation is graded. So the A1 level, all the words are clear and segmented. And by C1 level, people are speaking much as I am now to you in connected speech, and helping learners to get the schwa into their vocabulary of oral sounds which they recognize in many words. So why Sensations English? Just to think about the value of a real world resource in the classroom and what it means when we say that. So first of all, there's fresh weekly content from Sensations English. Every week you will have 2 new video reports and 1 new news article all at 5 CFR levels, complete with activities at those levels for you to use in your classrooms with your learners. And then you get the different themes and topics which we have. There are 7 themes and 33 topics linked to common curricula. And that means that the things that you need to teach your students in order for them to meet their requirements in their exams and assessments is in the news stories that we provide. There are real world situations, so they're great, which are graded to support and engage learners. The real world is that massively engaging context. And when we grade that information, it gives learners the confidence to engage with it, take it from their first language, all the learning and knowledge they have of those situations in their first language, and bring it into their second language practice and production. And all those activities and study tools, which are based on the report content, help learners to recycle that language which is in the report, that richly contextualized use of vocabulary and grammar and pronunciation, and helps them to practice all 4 skills and vocabulary and grammar and pronunciation and with that. So thinking about that content, here we've got some examples from flying paramedics in innovation to a history article about cultural artifacts stolen by the British. Then we've got longboarding and those sports. We've got Tasmanian devils being reintroduced to Australia. We've got a billionaire showing his philanthropic virtues, and we've got a food world program from being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So lots of different topics which you can select from. We don't suggest that you use all of them. You use the ones which will be engaging for you and your learners and suitable for their context. So thinking about all of these stories, what's common to all of them, because they're made news, is that they've got a human angle. So even the artifacts in the museum, which might be behind glass and rather inanimate, come to life in the human angle that the story gives them. The people negotiating what they're going to do, how they're going to bring these artifacts back to Ethiopia in this case. Remember, all the reports are at 5 CFR levels, so you can use 1 level with a class, or if you have a mixed ability to class, you can use 2 or 3 different levels with the class, and they all have the same stories, and they can all contribute to the same conversation in the class itself. There's so many opportunities because of the way the lessons and the materials, the activities are put together. There's so many opportunities for you as staff and managers to share and develop resources. So when you're working on a scheme of work, you can allocate different teachers, different tasks in order to spread the load, and then provide lesson plans or schemes of work integrating this for multiple classes in your schools. And you can do that because the activities are already there for you. So you don't need to spend lots of time developing those activities. You can focus on how you're going to teach these resources and what you're going to do with them to bring them to your students. And I'd spoken about the themes and topics. As I said, there are 33 topics related to your curriculum, and they're divided into 7 different themes: community, culture, entertainment, hard news, which is current affairs, innovation, lifestyle, and the natural world. And so within these engaging and rich categories, we've got subtopics so that you can then refine what you're looking for. And they all appear on the website in this searchable menu bar. So the real world situations then, let's think about them for a second. They bring student interest into the classroom from outside, and they raise student interest with the lesson content. They're also really focused on growing understanding of English, and the skills that they're using and developing, but also growing understanding of the world around them as well. And that helps bring in Bloom's taxonomy and the higher order thinking skills as we go through those levels from remember to apply to analyze, evaluate and create. And then we're thinking about the CFR and how these verbs which are coming up here are really key to different can do statements within the CFR as you go up the levels and as you stretch students. So even at a beginner level, you could get some forms of interpreting information that has been very clearly put down in short, clear, simple sentences with simple vocabulary, and get through to examining or questioning things. And that stretch will see engagement raise within the classroom and learners looking forward to their lessons even more than usual. So thinking about the activities and the study tools, these are commonplace activities, things that you will always have used already, and you will know, and you will have your own opinions about whether they're a favorite activity of yours or something that you rather avoid for some reason. But all of those, love them or be less keen on them, are presented now with digital flexibility. So you've got vocabulary, grammar and pronunciation activities to cover the language systems, and the 4 skills activities to cover all of those things that learners need to be able to do to use language. So I've talked a lot about Sensations English already. We're going to give you a short demonstration now of the website, and then Brett is going to take you through the teacher gradebook. So I've turned the sound off this recording so that I can speak without being interrupted. But here's the login page for my school, Adam Scott. And I just sign in now with my student ID and password. So I'm going into the site as a student. And then once I've typed my password in, I click sign in. And I'm logged in successfully. I go to the home page, which displays the newest story, and below it, the most popular this week's stories and the most popular stories on the site. And then each of the themes, you see the 3 most popular stories in that theme going down the page. And then you'll notice at the top, there's also that menu bar to go directly to all of the themes. So we're going to quickly go into the newest lesson, which came out just on Friday, and it's Hong Kong, skating in Hong Kong, and interesting story about a sport becoming popular during the pandemic. You can see those 5 different levels there, and I'm going to go to the B1 level. This will be set up automatically for each student to log in at their level, and underneath the video there's a transcript there, and which you can keep hidden, or you can print out or create a PDF of. And so let's go into the video first of all, play the video. Now you cannot hear the sound, I've muted that, but you can see the videos, really nice quality, really engaging images that learners have got, and you've got subtitles underneath that you can turn on and off. You can full screen it, and it's really clear quality still. And there's the volume control as well. As you can see, the images are really engaging, and then we've got speaking from different speakers from around the world as well, which mixes in with the report reader, news reader. And there's so much you can do with these images at loads of different levels, from beginner to advanced, very inquiring opportunities there to use. We're going to come out of this now. So that video is about 1.5 minutes long, a nice length for use in a classroom. And then if we go down, there's the interactive games. And the first thing I'm going to do is do the comprehension activity. So there's always a 5-question comprehension activity for each level of the video. And you can see the questions here at B1. They're pushing learners. What reason does one person give for enjoying the sport? And so they're pushing learners to think about and find that information. What difficulty do skaters face? We're upgrading the language there. We know that learners know the word do skaters have, and so it's intuiting that, really pushing towards the skills that IELTS and other exams ask for. If learners don't know an answer, they can check the transcript to develop their referencing skills, or you can ask them not to do that and to look at that later for themselves. We're going to skip on now, and you can see these next question here. Sorry, these are all questions that I did earlier today. And this last one, demand for quad stack gates. Demand, again, is a word that we've introduced at this level to talk about supply and demand, but it's been richly contextualized within the text. So we're bringing that back to learners. We get our scores. I scored 5 out of 5, and you can see the more games that are available there as well. And underneath the text as well, they're here too. So thinking about that was a video, I'm now going to go back to the main page and just show you an article text as well, and you can search for them in all lessons, or you can go to the theme tabs. I'm going to pop into entertainment and go to the Swiss town covered in chocolate story, which I just loved. It's story about a problem at the lint factory, and you can see the text is here. There's also a recording of it, so you can use it as a listening, and then you've got all of these games and activities. And think about this as your course book 2.0. It's not restricted by the page, yet it's got all of the activities and more that they could not fit on a page for you to choose from, and we've got lesson plans to help you do that as well. Then this tool, there's a listening tool which helps learners to listen and read. There's a reading tool as well at 3 different speeds, so that they can develop their skills at top level and bottom up processing. Then if we go to the grade book, the student can see their own abilities at that. You can see I haven't done any listening practice, but I'm quite good at reading, but my grammar's not very good on these activities. So they get that feedback and help them think about what to focus on. And the other thing in the student menu is the task panel, which shows you the tasks that students have set, which Brett is going to talk about in a minute. And you can see my latest task from my teacher is the Cocoa Snow lesson activities. I click on the details button and it brings me the tasks I've got to do from the teacher. Now this teacher set every task for me. You can see I've done the comprehension activity and got 5 out of 5. I can get feedback in that little tick box on the right, and then I can choose another, and here's that tick box coming up. Sorry, I did 5 questions. I got 4 right in the version that I've done here. I got 5 right in the one I just showed you. And then I can choose another. So that gives me feedback on my wrong answers. And then I can choose to play another game. I'm going to play the construct sentences game. So that is the website that students get access to use the site. And now I'm going to pass you on to Brett to talk about the teacher grade book. Brett, are you there?
I am. Thanks, Adam.
Brilliant.
That was great, and hopefully has explained the method and learning process around Sensations English and what we're trying to achieve. So as you can see, we've created something unique with a lot of thought, experience and research, so a student can use Sensations English to help them on their English language journey. But it was also really important for us to create something that teachers can use to help those students. And that's why we've created the Sensations English Teacher Gradebook. So what Adam showed you is from the student's view. The Teacher Gradebook, it's a simple way to allow teachers to integrate Sensations English into their learning. Each centre or school has access to a learning management portal, which enables them to manage users and monitor overall results with real ease and simplicity. It allows centres and teachers to effectively look at the different elements of Sensation English and put it into their own students' work. Teachers can set tasks, they can even set deadlines and monitor usage, activity, and track individual progress, or even via a classroom. All the data is there for deeper analysis if needed. It's very easy to use from a teacher's point of view, which we know is really important because you're all so busy. So we've created this based on our experience of using and being involved in other products for education. So activities can be set for whole classes or tailored to an individual use. It can be hybrid, blended, or even for private study, or a combination of all of those. So students have their own dashboard, which Adam showed you, and that will give them access to the feedback that you've given them from your access. So let's show you how the Teacher Gradebook works. So Adam, could you play that demo, please? Yeah, this is from one of our colleagues, Lewis, who you'll hear his voice. So if you watch this for a moment, and I'll come back on and just explain further.
And just when I press play, Brett, can you tell me that you can hear it? Okay.
I will certainly.
Hello and welcome to this demonstration of Sensations English new gradebook. So here we are on the Sensations English homepage with the latest story that we have broadcast, which is Zoom across an Icelandic glacier. Like all our reports, it's written at 5 different levels of English, A1 to C1, and it's supported by a range of games, puzzles, consolidation activities, study tools. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. But now I'm going to select a different tab where I'm logged in as the administrator of my new school, which I have called Monday School. And you can see I have registered 3 students. I've got 2 classrooms, 1 teacher, a task. The menu on the left-hand side enables you to add teachers, add classrooms, add new students, and you can also set tasks. So I'm going to set a new task. I'm going to call it Glacier Comprehension, and I need to give it a due date, and my due date will be in a couple of weeks' time. I have to give it a description. I'm going to say comprehension activity to do. I select my teacher. I select my student, who is Lewis. And now I choose the resources I want to put into my task. I could choose 1 or more activities from any of the stories that we have covered on Sensations English. I'm going to type in Glacier to bring up the story I'm interested in. And I want my student to do the comprehension activity at grade C1. Selected that, add the activity, and now I just check everything's correct. Everything's filled in, and I add the task, and there it is. Glacier comprehension has been added, due on November the 19th. Now, I'm going back to my student persona. Here I am logged in as a student. Look at my profile, look at task, and here is the new task that I have been set, Glacier comprehension. Let's go and do it. Now, in reality, a student would obviously read the story or watch the video first. Otherwise, how could they do the test? But I have seen the story. So in the interest of time, I'm going straight to the questions, which I am going to play at C1. And the first one, Rosella, which she finds the glacier's age awe-inspiring. Correct. The bus takes its name from a deity's fabled horse. And the next question is, the tour bus conducts visits to remote icy areas, I think. It does indeed. Next question. He believes that within the next 100 years, climate change could cause most of the glacier to disappear. And the final question, the glacier has been a feature of Iceland for thousands of years, but I'm actually going to choose the wrong answer. Will remain part of Iceland sites for millennia to come. Check the answer, that is wrong. Check my result. I scored 4 out of 5. Go back to tasks, and here, as a student, I can see my task that I just attempted. I did 5 questions. I scored 4 out of 5. I got 80% on that particular activity. And now I can look at my gradebook. I'm going back to my profile, and I can look at my gradebook, which measures my progress in all of the different tests I have taken. So I've done quite a few reading and comprehension tests, and I'm averaging 75% on vocab and grammar, 74% on reading. Not too bad. Could do better, I hope. And now I'm going to log back in as my administrator, and I can see the task that was set, and I can look at a report, and I can see that it was assigned to Lewis, and the task has been done. And I can even click on the total score to see which questions were attempted, which one was wrong. The wrong answer is the one highlighted, and I can offer some feedback. So there's a quick demonstration of our gradebook, really easy to use. You can select from the whole range of Sensations English stories. It's a lot of fun to use, actually, and we hope you enjoy using it and find it really useful with your students. Thank you very much for watching.
So thanks, Adam, for playing that. So so that was one of our colleagues, Lewis, running through the demo there, just really showing you the usage from a teacher's point of view, because we feel this is so important than just creating a product for students. So in summary, centres are provided with a dedicated school URL that can be used across all teachers and students. There would be an administrator that would have main access. Within this URL or portal, the administrators or teachers can set up students, and then they can manage the usage. There's a dashboard that shows which topics and subjects and activities that they've done, so you can get a quick snapshot. It's an easy to use management tool for classes or students. And you can create those tasks for your students if you want to. So you can then monitor how they've done. So once they've completed the task themselves, you can then go into their gradebook and comment and give them feedback, and they will see that. So it gives students full access to Sensations English. The teacher sets a task, and a personal gradebook is there for you both to see. The students will also receive an email as a notification if you've assigned the task to them. So that's really the gradebook and what we have. I'll hand you back over to Adam now.
Great, thanks
Adam.
Brett. And as you saw in that example, at a C1 level, we've really stretched the learners as well. So there's always somewhere else to go in terms of vocabulary and grammar in those questions, and then pulling them in the text and then pulling them out in the questions to help learners challenge them, just as they would in order to get a high IELTS score of 7 or above. So we move on now and thinking about what we've been talking about today and how this resource is useful for your schools, your pupils and teachers. So looking at the benefits, sorry, that went wrong. First of all, there's ease of use. The way in which the product is, sorry if I got flummoxed, the way in which the product is put together makes it easy to use. If you think about opening a course book, some course books are more user-friendly than others. We tried to make this product as user-friendly as possible. We've also built into everything we do, developing learners' language skills so that they can function in the modern world. We're thinking about how as teachers, you can set tasks so that you organize your work very easily in the teacher gradebook, and learners get that information really easily through the website. And then you can all, as a school, as a teacher, monitor usage. And let's look at these things in a little bit more detail. So the ease of use, we're really talking about coursebook 2.0. It's left the page and it's gone into a much more expansive environment online. And that means that we can add extra things, you can tailor things, you can use the same resources at different levels, so that learners are all engaged at their learning edge. As I mentioned earlier, you can develop schemes of work as a school for this. We provide generic lesson plans for lots of different lesson ideas, and you can of course start with them and use them as a starting point to tailor, or you can work on your own, knowing that the tasks have already been prepared, so you've got a rich variety of things to choose from, just as you'd be looking at that double page spread in a course book and thinking, which activities should I use in which order? What shall I supplement with? There's already so much else to supplement with that might normally go in a workbook or a CD-ROM in the old days. And you'd be able to bring all of that together without looking for extra resources, so that then you can focus on those bits of the class that really are you and the students connecting together. And then, of course, there's the differentiation, which means that if you've got mixed ability classes, then the weakest students can work on a lower level of the text. The bulk of the students can work at the level that you're delivering to. But those really bright students who have got much stronger ability don't need to sit at the front and kind of wait for personal engagement with you. They can do a higher level of the text and then share in the group discussions that you have, or the pair work that you have, and that actually raises the ability and engagement of the whole class. So really helping the class to build together and grow together in their language use. Then we've got the developing the language skills, skills activities, skills tools, skills based. You can see it's skills, skills, skills. And that's so important. Contextualizing language within readings and listenings and speakings and writing is really important to actually embed it in meaning and develop input into intake by the students from the teacher. And everything that is achievable because everything is so richly contextualized in a context which almost needs no introduction, because it is our real world rather than a situation on a course book page which has been made generic enough or distant enough not to date as the course book goes further from its publication point. So we've always got fresh content every week coming into Sensations English, and that content is contemporary, so it's going to last for a while as well. And then part of the content in the videos is also access to global speakers. The interviews from people using English around the world help to introduce learners to the many different types of English that they're going to hear in different workplaces as they use English in their work and study worlds. But it's always contextualized within a clear newsreader presented story, which at the lower levels, where we don't expect learners to be able to catch what the speakers are saying very clearly, at lower levels, that's being contextualized by the information the newsreaders gives before the mini interview comes up. So that's an extra support that means that learners can build on their intuiting, their gist understanding of what someone might be saying, and there's activities to work with that. Then with setting tasks, you've got the teacher gradebook to allocate activities, differentiate tasks. So you saw Lewis allocating tasks within a class to one student. You can allocate tasks to a whole class, or you can allocate the same tasks at different levels to different students, or even different tasks to different students if you want to focus, if you know from the data that certain students are better at receptive listening rather than receptive reading. You can set deadlines, and then you can provide feedback. You can provide digital feedback to the students so that they get it straight away, and you can do that working from home when you're preparing your next lesson and reviewing the activities from the last lesson. And monitoring that usage is the other key thing for your class and your institution. We all monitor in our classrooms. It's part of our meat and drink, part of our key tools that we use. But I know as a teacher that when I do research in a classroom and I collect data more carefully, I learn so much more than when I'm monitoring and doing a million other things at once, as we multitask all the time in our classrooms. So this is like doing research every day in your classroom. You get data that you can look at after the class. You get to check each student's progress and the class's progress overall. You get to, that helps you to identify needs that you probably saw in some way, but you can then dig into deeper by looking at the visually displayed data. And that helps you to analyze progress over time as well. So the data all displays with, this week, this month, last month, and that helps you to see where progress is happening and what the outcome is of the teaching and the learning that your students are doing in your classroom and also in your institution as a whole, allowing you to reflect over time and then plan and adjust and strategize to improve even further the quality of the education that you're providing. So that is everything from me. Thank you very much for your time. I'd like to open to some Q&A, please. Priyala, is that okay? Oh, your mic's off, Priyala.
Hello. Sorry for that tech glitch. So the chat box is now being enabled. Please, if you can post your questions, then I can. Any questions, please post. Okay, so one question is, what is the cost of that course book? But we can get about the details about the costing and everything can be sent to you. Can we get the recording of the session? Is this available for trial? Is this available for a trial with the kids? Yes, we can include. So how can we include Sensations English with NEP India? Brett? Mr. Adam, are you there?
Oh, Adam, you're on mute. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear the end of it. Might be one for me or might be one for Adam.
Here is, how can we include Sensations English with the NEP, the New Educational Policy of India, which talks about experiential learning and things like that.
Maybe one for Adam, actually.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that.
Feedback on that one?
So I've spent most of my career trying to bring experiential learning into the classroom because I know that I've found that learners really develop more from that situation. So loads of and that's what the news is so good for. Loads of these situations are springboards for really engaging class activities, projects, schemes of work. And that's what I was talking about in terms of developing your schemes of work that allow you to get the students to go through that experiential learning. You can, task-based learning, enabling learners to grow through their development of higher order thinking skills to then create some kind of product which really locks in that learning. And because these are real world contexts rather than the hypothetical that you might have in a typical course book, then you can bring those things straight to the students rather than having to transfer that environment from the course book to your local area, for example, to raise engagement and help learners connect to it. So I hope that answers your question, but I'll happily speak more on it if you want.
I think it's been addressed. Another question is somebody's asking that if you can throw some more light on how to build on the speaking skills and communication skills through this program. We talked about comprehension and critical thinking, but communication, how to take it forward there.
Yes, so one of the things that there's building up speaking in lots of ways. Now we have to think about, and writing as well. There are games that deal with the granular level of speaking and writing. So things like speaking, practicing being the newsreader, for example. So there's an activity where students can record every sentence which is in the news report, and then listen to it and compare it to the sentence which has been said by the newsreader, so that there's an awareness of the bottom up, the granular, the mechanical side of speaking, and those individual elements. And the same with writing. There are activities where learners have to reconstitute a sentence, or select particular words which are necessary for this clause or for this paragraph, and that's the base level, that's the low level granular mechanics of it. Then of course you've got the actual creative production of and creative use of language, and that comes in with questions and discussion points, which are all in the lesson plans, that the generic lesson plans that we provide, which relate then to each of the stories. And there are lesson plans for speaking, for projects, for writing, basic writing tasks, for then process writing and team writing, so that you get communication in there. There's recommendations to use microblogging via some kind of chat facility, and how those can be included. There's also the ways in which, and this could be true for any product really, or for any teacher rather, there's also ways of using the technology to allow students to record things, so that then they can self-assess and they can peer assess, so that then you've got people getting used to giving supportive feedback to each other and saying from their perspective what they understood and what they found hard to understand. So there's lots of ways to build in technology with this. You've got students working on the platform already, so then bringing in something else, whether it's from your learning system in your school, or if you're using Google Classroom, or any platform that you would use. In my context, I like using Edmodo. Then that really helps to bring it all together, because learners are used to that engagement. It's not a shift for them from what they're doing.
Thank you. A lot of people are very keen on knowing that if the content that we have used in the program is applicable to the Indian context.
Yes, so, I mean, the content it's our mission to cover news from around the world. And in fact, there are quite a lot of stories which come from India. AFP does cover Indian stories. So when we dealt with the pandemic, we looked at the situation in Delhi that had come from that, and that led into health, but also environment, dealing with the environmental aspects of things. The topics which are used in the topics that we use are typical topics for English language teaching, and they relate to the Common Core curriculums that students have to cover, whether it's in Poland or India or Korea, and so we've grouped these into 7 themes and 33 sub-themes or topics, but they can then be taken. Some of them won't be necessary for your education context. In Poland, for example, they have 18 topics. So some of them are covered by 2 topics in ours. 1 or 2 of them are just things you wouldn't touch. And so one thing I probably think that might be less relevant is some of the hard news stories which come under politics. But remember, that's 1 topic out of 33 which you might not use, and which you might actually use for yourself in as a way of getting some on-hand English language news to you without going anywhere else. So I often find I read things on resources for myself rather than ending up ever using them in the classroom. So So there's a world to dive into, I suppose, is what I'm saying there.
Just to add to that, Adam, if you don't mind, just one thing on there. So, you know, with regard to the stories or the news articles that we've got, the team that we've got producing these and editing them and you know, selecting them along with the teachers, they've got many years experience working in news and media organizations like the BBC and ITN. So their understanding of what's right for this product is really key to this as well, and an element that we probably don't speak about enough.
You're right.
But it's really important that their knowledge and experience of working for those organizations, they can spot what's right for this global product.
One last question that I would like to ask you that we have got here is that, is there a way in this program which is through which we can understand the level of functioning of our children? Is there anything like that, like where we can test the level of functioning in English language?
Yes, Brett, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so when a student first goes onto Sensations English, when they've logged in, there are a couple of different ways that they can test their level. So it might be that they're already doing a global exam recognition, like an IELTS or something, and they can click on one of those and put in what their grade is or their predicted grade, and it will then suggest which level that they should be working with in Sensations English. There's also another alternative that they can actually do a quick test. So it will throw some questions at them, they answer the questions, and then it will then suggest what level they should be learning at. So across that A1 to C1, it will suggest where they should start.
And I'd like to pick up from there and say that the other great thing about this is that when a student is using any of the texts, they are in effect testing themselves on where they are in terms of their level for that particular topic, because I've been using this with classes where one text, one video on a family situation, my B1 class were actually confident going up to B2 and then going up to C1 and feeling that they were absolutely confident that they could understand the majority of what was being said at that level. Whereas another text on a science-based topic, that same B1 class, found the B1 level a bit challenging and wanted to go down to A2 level and then could understand both A2 level and have scaffolding to take them back up to B1. So that ability to assess your level yourself is a real strength that this product provides, and also the awareness that your level is going to be different for different topics which you've got more familiarity with. I'm pretty sure that I'm not C2 at physics, for example, even in English. So this is a really useful area that comes out then in class discussion, who found what easier and why they found it easier, and that helps us then to become better self-directed and self-managing learners.
Thank you very much. Dear audience, I hope the session was a fruitful one for all of us. A link has been posted in the chat box. It's a feedback form. Please take 2 minutes to fill this in. Your feedback is valuable for us. Thank you, Mr. Adam and Brett, for an informative and a very interesting session.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting us. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Want to know more about many such programs? Please log on to our website, saareducation.com. This is Priyari Goyal saying bye-bye for today. Thank you very much for being a lovely audience. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.